right? And then I taught, and then after that I move on to become an entrepreneur, right? And some degree of success, more degrees of failures, lots of learning before I move on to consultancy, which right, I would study, the situation, right, and I will come up with multitudes of and variety of probably problems and things that I could make better and so on. But the question is, which one first?
Okay, so how long do you think this process, like the timeline for this process, do you think this can be done in a very in a matter of days? Hi everyone, welcome to my episode 9 of the Innovators Minute. Today we have with us Mr. Iskandar from Singapore. So he will be sharing with us on the innovation processes in order to successfully commercialize a product and what could be the possible challenges or hiccup that we'll be experiencing along this process. So it could be any steps you could actually implement. For example, design thinking. It could be any other processes that you can implement. But what he'll be sharing with us, these are the crucial steps that you cannot avoid, but to implement this process so that you can able to successfully commercialize a product. So for example, let's say you're able to develop a product, but you're not able to commercialize it. What could be possibly the reason laid behind of this? Is either you're laid back or you are ahead of them, ahead of the trending. So what possibly you should do if you experience such things? So these are the things that he's going to talk with us today. So tune into the podcast and let's hear from Mr. Iskandar himself. Hi, Mr. Iskandar.
Hi, hello, hi Visha, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
Okay.
Yes.
So how is it in Singapore right now?
I guess it's much better, right? Because we are planning to open up a bit more. We can stop counting beans and move towards opening up the country to visitors and even allowing those vaccinated Singaporeans to actually travel out. So yeah, I guess I shouldn't be complaining, and I look forward to traveling maybe to KL, hopefully.
So like vaccination and all, it's completed. I mean, like how many percentage has been completed?
Okay, we started pretty slow because Singapore being Singapore, right? Always like must do everything nicely, right? But the impetus now is actually more towards vaccination, right? Aggressive testing. So and with these two at the forefront of the strategy, and of course, keeping Singaporeans, residents and all complying. So the numbers are actually quite okay. We aim to get like 60-70% first vaccination by end of this month, right? And then hopefully a double, that by September and so on. Then double vaccination, probably by 50% by September, if I remember the numbers correctly.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. So okay, let's talk about you. So introduce a bit about yourself. What do you do?
Okay, I have a very colorful background, and I mean colorful is that I wore green before, right? And then I wore the numerous colors in the classroom, and then I decided that when I was wear green, I was a military officer. That's where I started my career, right? And then I taught, and then after that I moved on to become an entrepreneur, right? I had my first startup, education tech. And some degree of success, more degrees of failures, lots of learning before I move on to consultancy, which also gave me an opportunity to set up another startup, which was making money, right? Within the first year, over $1 million valuation. Once I delivered on my promise to the board of directors, I left. And I did program management consulting, exposed to more corporate side of things. And right now I have my Bettery Lab, which is my boutique consultancy that helps businesses to do it better. And by doing it better, we're looking at processes, people, as well as how businesses tell their story. right? I'm also, the program director at Skills Union, where I lead the team to deliver a program on digital entrepreneurship. So yes, I'm quite occupied, busy, and but I still want to make time, to chat about innovation, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, that's great. So, okay, talking about innovations, it's a very bright scope, right? It's very broad scope, sorry. It's a very broad scope. So, what are the scope that you actually will emphasize when you're talking about innovation itself?
All right. When we talk about innovation, it's not the innovation for the sake of innovation or to make money, but I think the a real genuine innovation will be most valuable when it is trying to solve a problem, right? Or to create exponential value to an existing solution,
Okay.
right? And this is important when we look around, we ask ourselves today, right, what is it that we can do, or what problems, right, that we need to solve, or what existing solution can we make better, right? Which is, of course, part of my Bettery Lab's logo, tagline is like always doing it better, right? So that is to me, the fundamental first step when someone says to innovate, whether you're within a company, or you're running a business, or even if you're, a policymaker.
Yes. So, okay. So this entire process, okay, what would be like the fundamental process of innovating? Let us say a process, a product, anything. What is the fundamental process?
Process itself. Okay. So, like I said, innovation starts with the question, of a problem, right? So this is where we apply design thinking and in the multitudes of is how it appears, right? But it always starts with the question of what can I do better, or what I want to solve. And then the next thing, of course, is to do some research, right? So I'm basically, it may sound like I'm repeating design thinking, but actually I am, because personally, that's what I apply the first thing if I want to innovate something, right? I would study, the situation, right? And I will come up with multitudes of and variety of probably problems and things that I could make better and so on. But the question is, which one first, right? And that's where you can, if you're working in a team and so on, you look at either what the biggest pain point that you're trying to solve, or the greatest value you want to create. So make a decision there,
Okay.
right? And then the next thing is you do your research, you do your interviews, right? Build the empathy, trying to understand what goes on. And then this is, of course, the divergent process, right?
Yeah.
And then you look into the conversion process, where you ask yourself, okay, now we got lots of problems or lots of values that we want to create exponentially, but which one? And this is also a part where, given the group that you're working with, or even yourself, ask yourself, what do you have on the table, right? What can you do? And narrow down, let's be realistic, you're not going to solve Elon Musk problem, because you're not Elon Musk, you're not SpaceX, right? You can solve his problem, wonderful, bring us all to space. But you look at what you can do in the context, whether your work or your aspiration, right? And narrow it down to a problem statement. And the problem statement has to be genuine, right? Wide enough for you to create value, but not too narrow such that, there's nothing much for you to do, right? And it only ends up doing some incremental, innovation. And of course, then the next is, of course, you ideate and so on. Okay, again, I'm just describing, design thinking, but fundamentally, that's what I would use and my teams uses.
Okay. So how long do you think this process, like the timeline for this process, do you think this can be done in a very in a matter of days, or does it take a matter of months?
Oh, okay.
Very subjective.
Realistically, you can't do it within number of days, unless, of course, the immediate problem is something small, right? And it also means the impact is very small. There is a certain number of days and time you have to commit, especially when you're doing your research, right? Or you're doing your interviews and so on. Ideation and all this, you probably can do in a day, right? But then there is that step where you prototype your ideas, right? As part of, even commercialization of innovation and so on, right? There is the need for you to prototype, and test and iterate. Because the question is that how many rounds of iterations before you get the solution that you are looking for, right? And even then, maybe the next iteration, you have an exponential increase in terms of value of what you are doing, right? But the question is, when do you stop? Not how long are you going to take before you actually launch your innovation or you apply your innovation, the solution itself, right? Yeah, I can't give you a specific, but if you can give me like a product, and so on, it could be it could be as short as 2 months, or it could be as long as a year. That depends on iteration and how big the market that you're gonna going into.
It's subjective, right? But okay, the process that you were saying, empathy, you define your problem statement, and then you come to ideation, your prototype, and then testing and all. So this entire process, where do you think normally the hiccups will begin? Like, is it at the problem statement or during the ideation process? Where the hiccups really start?
Anywhere, to be honest, anywhere.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. If you ask the wrong question, right? When you're doing your interview, if you ask the wrong question, then you will never be able to get the right user stories and so on, right? And then you might end up having to go back, and then if you define the wrong problem statement, you're going to end up solving different things, the wrong things, right? That is because you make assumptions and so on. If you got it wrong at the point of, ideation, normally we don't get it wrong, right? But then prototyping, if you are rushing your prototype, you test it at the wrong group, ask the wrong questions when you are doing prototype feedback, then you can go as far back as ideation again, if you're lucky, or go back to asking the right questions at the interview stage, because you are basically looking at the wrong target segment, right? And testing. You can go as far as testing, and if your variables that you're testing is not, right, you're gonna get hiccups. So now the question is, at which point will be costliest, right? So if you're a product development, that it will be prototyping and beyond. And that might be costly, depending on whether you are doing a Frankenstein-like prototyping, or you are doing, look-alike kind of prototyping, or, your minimal viable product, or, and beyond, right? And that has many examples, actually.
It will go in deeper and deeper and deeper, I know. Okay, I got another few more questions I wanted to ask on the, along this process, right, you need to have money, resources, of course, because especially when you are building a prototype and everything, you need to have your resources ready. So besides human resource, technical expertise, of course, money plays a very huge role. At which point do you think they should actually start applying for a grant or looking for a collaboration process? At which pace do you think they should have initiated all this?
You mean the funding or the financial resource, right, for innovation? It all starts with how big the problem that you're solving, or whose problem. I remember my professor telling me, innovation, unlike invention, has this element of sellability, right? It is not an invention if you cannot sell. And definition of sell is generate revenue or income or investment, right? So it always asks if you at the very start, you are very clear about these few things. Number one, what problem are you solving? Right? Or what value are you exponentially creating? Number two, how big is this problem? Right? Right. What is what is the pain point? Right. And the third is anyone willing to pay for it? Right? To solve this problem. Third one, how much is that person paying? And the last question, how often will that fellow pay? Will be paying. So if you can answer this question confidently and somehow put it in a simple business canvas or plan and so on, and you take it to a potential investor whose problem you are solving, it's very likely that they will throw some money in, even it means that you do a feasibility study, right? So, and if you are an entrepreneur, right? And you want to push this out, and this is where you get your pre-seed money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that is my understanding and my experience about funding, and I've done it before. Of course, different stage where I got the money.
It's precisely said, especially on the questions you need to ask, right? When you're developing something, regardless, you have the prototype in your hand, but before that itself, you should ask the right question, like what you mentioned, like anyone's going to buy this, or it's how much is it they willing to pay to buy this. That is very important question, because I've come across some innovations or invention, they actually were like shock sendiri, they were like thinking, oh,
Yes,
what,
yes.
definitely people will buy because it looks so nice and all. They were so excited because it's in the trend and all, but when it really goes into the market, people felt like, what is this? People just give, it's like totally ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like what you said, asking the right question of the product even before you're going into the prototype stage, that defining your problem statement, I think that's the most crucial part, right?
Yes. So in like you like invention versus innovation, it is important that we know that the end state of an innovation or commercializing it or someone paying for it, right? So, and that is very important, and that has to go alongside as you progress to the next step of your innovation and development and so on, right? It cannot, it's like in colloquial terms, right? Short nearly, like you fall in love with your own solution, right? But and this is my business advice to all my, when I was giving up my business, mentoring and so on, I always say that just because you got something to sell doesn't mean people want to buy.
Yes.
And that is a fundamental, understanding of commercialization of innovation, right?
I do have one product, and based on my experience, it's very how to say, breakthrough innovation. I would say, if no one have done it before, I file patent, I won award to it. But when it comes to commercialization, it's no more a wow factor there. In terms of research, yes, oh, there's like this breakthrough and everything. But when it comes to marketing that innovation, right? It's not viable anymore. It's not tangible at all. So there's two
Oh,
different.
no, there could be another reason. Let me offer you another reason for why. You're a product engineer, right? And you're an innovator. You're brilliant in terms of wanting to do it better, do it different, right? And you want to put out solutions that's yet. But that is also a problem when sometimes you do that. You may be ahead of the market. You may be too advanced, right, for the consumer, and the challenge when you do that in commercialization is that you need to educate, because you're the first mover, right? Nobody, like example of Apple, right? Phone. Nobody knows they need Apple phone until Steve Jobs put it in our face and says, you need this, you want this. And he do it in such finesse that we didn't realize that he was doing two things. One, he was educating us and was creating demand, right? So likewise, if you are producing something that no one has seen before, but in your research, your studies, your feasibility studies, it says, no, it's going to solve us so much and create so much value. Why no one wants? Because you forgot to educate them, right? So as part of especially when you're ahead of your time, bear in mind that you come with the responsibility of educating, because you will have your first adopters, right? But the main bulk of it needs education.
That's a very good point, actually. I never thought of that. Honestly, yeah, I actually never thought of educating anyone on that. What was key. People like, what are you doing? I was like, I do tell to the engineers, they do understand. But when it comes to market, people are thinking on the different aspect. They're thinking on the profit values, whether it's how long it's going to be this market, or it's very limited market for it. Probably it's only in oil and gas, but it's not applicable in other industries. You can't expand the market. So there were a lot of problems. I was just thinking, okay, never mind. I just got my award.
But there's one more thing that I thought I should also share with you, because you see, as innovator, right, we are excited about the future that we are building. We're excited by this value, exponential value we're creating, or the problem that we're solving, right? And because of that, we are visionaries in that way. Nobody understands what we are thinking or talking about. And that actually is a problem. So I've watched some, equivalent to like Dragon's Den and so on. And I've also seen, when I was mentoring into your university when there are startups, right? The founder, who is also maybe the CTO or so on, they talk in a language that only they and their team understand. So if I'm here and totally new to what your idea or your innovation is, you cannot speak to me in jargons. You need to speak and communicate to me your value in very simple terms, right? And
Yes.
secondly, you must also demonstrate your understanding of how is this new product or service and so on, gonna have its customer lifetime value and so on over time, right? So again, sometimes I've seen that the pitch is not done by the founder or the visionary, and I've seen this very enlightened students and undergrads that says that, oh, if he speaks, he's gonna get technical and you won't understand. So we have our designated roles, and I'm chief marketing officer, and that's my job. So that is important, right? So maybe if you want to pitch something to your boss in future, you don't go get someone from BD side to do.
Okay.
Then they will speak the commercial language, like, hey boss, this translates to this much number, and rather than the technical specs.
Correct. I understand. Yeah. I'm not the right person to sell, to put it out in the market. Probably I can explain how it works technically, but yeah, not to right. This should be the right person to actually sell the product. Okay. Very interesting actually. now I got the
I
idea.
know you're very tempted to ask me a lot of questions, right? You want to ask me a lot of questions, but you're running out of time.
A lot. Okay, so I just want to ask. Okay, let's just conclude this. What would be your advice for future generations who wants to venture into R&D or product development, innovation in this field? Would be your first advice that you think that they should know?
Get out of your office or your lab.
Okay.
Because you don't find the innovation, inspiration, or the problems that you need to solve in there. Get out, talk to people, feel the pain, right? Look around, empathize, right? I don't want to stereotype engineers as being boring. I have a lot of very interesting engineer friends, and you're one of them. So I think there is a need to go out there and talk to people, and it's like and different groups of people. So whether your interest is in business or your interest is in production, right? If you want to do production, products, right, or engineering products and so on, go to the shop, ask the salesman, hey, which are the things that sells well, which are the things don't sell well, right? And then they will come in and tell you, oh, what do they feedback? So go out there and talk to the people that carries your product or speak on the behalf of your product, right? And users and so on. So that is my first advice, right? My second advice is, of course, as much as system is important, right? But don't forget to imagine what solutions you can, because sometimes we are so stickler to systems and processes that we limit ourselves to the outcomes that we can get. And when I say outcomes, because you're doing this process so many times, you expect certain results. And therefore, predictability is good, but are you ready to look beyond what you expected and see something new? You probably missed it, because you're doing it so many times. But you might actually pick up, hey, I didn't recognize that pattern before, or I didn't know, that can do as well. Because otherwise, we will not have the different, when people, what do you call that, refined oil, right? Crude oil, we will not have those different layers and different things that come out, plastics and so on, right? If you only want one type of oil, a refined oil, So yeah, I mean, those two are the only things. I have many more, but no.
That's a very great advice. I wish someone would have told me all this, 5-6 years back before I ventured into R&D and everything. What you said is very true. We were talking based on experience, and I also learned along the way. And right now I also learned a lot of things from you in this short conversation. It's a lot of beneficial stuff. And thank you so much for your time today, Mr. Iskandar. It's I hope we can talk on different topics the next time, but it's good for now. And thank you so much again for your time.
You're welcome, and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.